You ever notice how some women walk into a room and you can just feel it? They don't have to say a word. They don't need to raise their voice. They don't need fancy clothes or titles. But something about them, something quiet, strong and steady, makes people stop and pay attention. It's not arrogance. It's not showing off. It's confidence. Real confidence. The kind that doesn't shout, but whispers, "I know who I am, and I'm at peace with it." Now, I'll tell you something. That kind of presence isn't born out of luck or good genes. It doesn't come from approval, applause, or how many people call you every day. No, it's built slowly, carefully, over time. And the good news? It's never too late to build it. In fact, some of the most quietly powerful women I've ever met found that strength not in their 30s or 40s, but in their 60s, 70s, even beyond. And I know what you might be thinking. That's great and all, but I've been through a lot. Life hasn't exactly rolled out the red carpet. Maybe you've been overlooked, taken for granted, pushed aside. Maybe the mirror shows a woman who's weathered her share of storms and who sometimes wonders if her best days are behind her. Let me tell you right now, they are not. Because here's the truth. And it's the secret confident women carry quietly, like a stone in the pocket they reach for when they need to remember who they are. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. Not your worth, not your beauty, not your wisdom. You've earned the right to live on your own terms. Fully, boldly, softly, even, if that's your style. But always with dignity. In this video, I want to walk with you through the real roots of confidence. Not the shallow kind, but the deep kind. The kind that doesn't crack when someone disapproves. The kind that doesn't vanish when you're alone. We'll talk about what it means to hold your ground, to know your value without shouting it, and how a woman, no matter her age, can radiate something so rare and powerful that the world has no choice but to listen. So let's start with the first thing confident women know. And I mean really know in their bones. They've stopped apologizing for taking up space. You've seen it, haven't you? Women who shrink themselves just to make others more comfortable. Who downplay their achievements, their opinions, even their needs. It starts early. Don't be too loud. Don't be too bossy. Don't be too much. And for years, many live with this quiet message running through their minds. Tone it down, stay small, be nice. But confident women, they've decided that their existence isn't an inconvenience, that their voice has weight. They don't walk into a room wondering if they belong. They know they belong because they're alive, they've lived, and they carry stories in their bones. They've nursed children and buried loved ones. Built homes and held marriages together, reinvented themselves again and again. If anyone has earned their space, it's them. Now, this doesn't mean they barge in and demand attention. No, there's a grace in the way they carry themselves. It's not about pushing others aside. It's about no longer stepping out of their own light. They ask for what they need without shame. They share their thoughts without softening the truth. And maybe most importantly, they've stopped trying to be everything for everyone. And that's the second thing confident women know. Being everything for everyone is a recipe for losing yourself. It's a trap, isn't it? You start by helping, then you're helping all the time. You're needed, so you keep showing up. And somewhere along the line, your name gets lost under titles like mom, grandma, caregiver, wife. You do it all with love, but if you're not careful, you wake up one day and realize you don't know when you last sat still with your own dreams. But confident women, they've made peace with disappointing people sometimes. That sounds harsh, but it's not. It's healthy. They've realized that their time, their energy, their heart, it's sacred, and it's not meant to be stretched so thin that they vanish. So when they say no now, it's not rejection, it's wisdom. It's a boundary that says, I matter too. I remember speaking with a woman once, must have been in her early 70s. Her hair was silver, tied back neatly, and her eyes, they were sharp. She said to me, "For years, I thought being loved meant being needed. Now I know being loved means being seen, and to be seen, I had to stop hiding behind everyone else's needs." That stuck with me. She told me how, after her children had grown and gone, she didn't know what to do with herself. She'd been so wrapped up in being a mother that the silence of her home felt like failure. But slowly, she started listening to the small voice inside that asked, "What do you want now?" And when she honored that voice, when she joined the choir she'd always dreamed of, when she learned to paint, when she allowed herself to be a beginner again, something shifted. She didn't just regain her confidence, she discovered it in a whole new way, not the confidence of knowing all the answers, but the confidence of being open, of being alive. Which brings me to something else confident women understand deeply. They are allowed to evolve. You see, the world sometimes tries to tell women that after a certain age, the story's already been written, that your role has been played, your purpose fulfilled, and now it's time to fade into the background quietly. But confident women, oh, they don't buy that for a second. They know that 60 is not the end of anything. It's just a new chapter, and just like every chapter before, it's waiting to be written with curiosity, courage, and maybe even a little mischief. They try new things, not to prove anything, but because they're still curious. They change their minds, they set new boundaries, they let go of beliefs that used to keep them stuck, and they do it all without apology, because they've realized they don't owe anyone a static version of themselves. Now, some folks don't like that. Some friends or family get uncomfortable when a woman dares to step outside the lines they've drawn for her, but that's all right. Confident women have learned that growth sometimes costs you comfort, and they're willing to pay that price for the reward of living true. So maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe something inside you is whispering, "There's more." And maybe part of you is afraid to listen to that voice because you've lived a life of holding it all together for everyone else. But what if that quiet voice isn't trying to pull you away from who you've been, but guiding you back to who you really are? Let that sink in. Confidence doesn't mean never doubting yourself. It means choosing not to abandon yourself when doubt comes. It means staying close to your own truth even when it's inconvenient. It means honoring your own needs without guilt. And it means trusting that you are still becoming, that the most powerful version of you may still be on her way. You may not see her yet, but she's there, in the way you pause before saying yes to something you don't really want, in the way you finally speak up when someone crosses a line, in the way you laugh a little louder now, care a little less what people think, and wear what makes you feel beautiful, even if it breaks some unspoken age rule. She's been with you all along, that version of you that doesn't need permission to be whole. And the more you listen to her, the more you start to realize confidence isn't about becoming someone else. It's about coming home to yourself. So breathe that in. Because now that we've begun this journey of remembering who you really are, we can go even deeper. Let's keep walking. You know, there's something remarkable that happens when a woman decides she no longer needs to explain herself. That's when everything begins to shift. Not because life suddenly becomes easier. No, life is still life. But because the center of gravity moves. It moves from out there to in here, to the core, to the place inside you that's quiet, strong, unshakable. That's another thing confident women understand, often after years, sometimes decades, of doubt. They trust their inner compass more than they trust outside noise. And believe me, there's plenty of noise out there, especially for women of a certain age. Too old, too opinionated, too quiet, too emotional, too invisible, too visible. You can't win if you try to meet all the expectations out there, but once you stop playing that game, you realize you were never supposed to. I remember watching a woman at a community event once. She wasn't trying to be noticed, but you couldn't take your eyes off her. She moved with ease, smiled when she felt like it, said no when something didn't feel right, and didn't flinch when others disagreed with her. Someone called her difficult, and she just laughed. Not bitterly, not sharply, just warmly, like someone who's heard that word before and stopped giving it power. You could tell she didn't measure her worth by how many people approved of her. She listened to her own knowing, her own gut, her own years of experience, and that, I think, is one of the most radical things a woman can do, to believe her own voice even when it's the only one in the room. You've probably had moments like that too, where you knew something deep in your bones, but others questioned you, doubted you, or brushed it off. And maybe, back then, you silenced yourself to keep the peace. Maybe you went along just to avoid conflict. But confident women, they learn that inner peace is more valuable than outer harmony. They choose truth, even when it shakes things up. They don't call it intuition anymore like it's some soft, mysterious thing. They call it wisdom. Earned wisdom. And they trust it. And here's where it gets even more powerful. Once a woman starts trusting herself, something interesting happens. She becomes far less interested in competition and far more drawn to connection, because that's another secret confident women know. Comparison is a thief, and they've stopped letting it in the door. There's always going to be someone with smoother skin or a fancier car or a louder voice. Always. The world is full of highlight reels, especially now that everything is packaged and filtered and posted for public approval. But what's real? What's real is a life built from truth. A life with cracks and scars and moments of quiet victory that don't need applause. Confident women, they don't waste time wishing they were someone else. They see another woman's beauty and strength, and instead of shrinking, they nod. Maybe even say, "Good for her," because they know her shine doesn't dim their own. There's room for everyone. I met a woman once in her late 60s who said, "The moment I stopped comparing my journey to other women's, I started living my own." She said it with this calm glow in her eyes, like someone who had finally laid down a burden she carried far too long. And she wasn't flashy. She wore simple clothes, no makeup, her hair tied back. But when she spoke, people listened. Not because she demanded it, but because she didn't need it. And that's what made her magnetic. There's a freedom in that, in not needing to compete, in not needing to keep up or prove or outperform. Confident women understand this deeply. Life isn't a race, it's a walk, and the pace is your own. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes slow, sometimes you rest, sometimes you climb. But the path is yours alone. And when you realize that, really realize it, you stop looking sideways. You look ahead, or within. I had a conversation not long ago with a woman who just turned 70. She said something I won't forget. "I used to chase after people who didn't care if I stayed or left. Now I sit quietly and let those who value me find their way to my table." That kind of confidence. It's quiet, but it's unshakable. And part of that comes from something else. Confident women understand that their time is precious, and they guard it. Fiercely. It's no longer about being busy for the sake of being busy. It's not about saying yes out of guilt or showing up just to be polite. They've learned that every moment is an investment, and they've started asking the most powerful question. Is this how I want to spend my life energy? Not out of selfishness, but out of clarity. When you've lived through as much as many women have, loss, change, reinvention, you start to see time differently. Not as something to be filled, but as something to be honored. So confident women make different choices. They leave conversations that drain them. They don't pick up the phone when they need silence. They cancel plans without apology if their body or spirit needs rest. And they don't explain. They simply live from a place of deep knowing. You see it in how they move, how they choose what to wear, not to impress, but to feel good. How they decorate their homes, not for trends, but for comfort. How they speak, not to dominate, but to express. They're not in a rush. They're not trying to keep up. They're just living fully, honestly, on purpose. And here's the beautiful thing, that kind of life, it invites others to do the same. It gives permission, without words, for other women to breathe deeper, laugh louder, take up more space, or step into their truth. Confidence, after all, is contagious. I wonder, what would it look like if you stopped asking permission and started trusting your own rhythm? What if you let go of the idea that you need to earn rest, joy, or softness? What if you began to move through life as if you already belong, because you do? I don't say these things lightly. I know many women who've carried burdens their whole lives, who've been told that their needs are secondary, who've been made to feel like confidence is arrogance and quiet strength is weakness. But confident women have rewritten those stories. They've said, I can be kind and still say no. I can be generous and still have boundaries. I can be loving and still choose myself. And they live like they mean it. They don't ask to be liked. They ask to be respected, and they start by respecting themselves. And slowly, the world begins to shift around them. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes the change is in something small, standing a little taller in the grocery line, speaking with a firmer voice at the doctor's office, pausing before agreeing to something out of habit. But those small things, they build the foundation of a whole new way of being. And it's not about being loud or bold or always strong. Confidence doesn't mean never feeling afraid. It means knowing you'll keep going even when you are. It means holding yourself like someone who matters. Because you do. There's a moment in every woman's life when she looks around and realizes she's done bending. Maybe it happens quietly, after a long walk where the trees don't ask her to be anything but herself. Maybe it comes after a conversation that leaves her feeling small one too many times. Or maybe it rises up suddenly, like a wave, and she thinks, no more. That moment is sacred, because it marks the shift from survival to presence, from performing to simply being. And it often leads to one of the most overlooked forms of confidence there is, the confidence to be still. You see, we live in a world that celebrates the loud, the busy, the always doing. But confident women know the value of stillness. They understand that power doesn't always announce itself. It often waits, watches, chooses its moment. They're not afraid of quiet. They don't rush to fill silences in conversations. They don't panic when a day stretches ahead with nothing urgent to do. They've made peace with their own company. And that's something, isn't it? To be alone without feeling lonely, to sit with yourself and not reach for distraction, to pour a cup of tea, look out the window and know this is enough. That kind of stillness is a kind of knowing, a kind of rootedness. It says, I'm not chasing anymore. I've already arrived. And in that stillness, something else starts to bloom. A deep, quiet joy that doesn't depend on anyone else's permission. This joy isn't the kind that comes from grand achievements or big celebrations. It's the kind that visits in the ordinary, when the sun hits the kitchen table just right, or when you catch yourself humming while folding towels. It's the moment you laugh out loud alone in your car at a memory that only you remember. It's the peace that comes when you finally stop trying to explain yourself to people who never truly listened. Confident women don't wait for joy to come from the outside. They carry it with them, like a candle lit from within. And because of that, they don't need to impress anyone. They've let go of the idea that they need to be understood by everyone in order to feel valid. They know that the most important understanding is the one they have with themselves. There's such freedom in that. I once had the honor of speaking with a woman in her 70s who said, I spent too many years decorating myself like a storefront. I dressed for others, smiled for others, even suffered quietly so others wouldn't be uncomfortable. Now, I decorate my life for me. She wasn't bitter. Not at all. In fact, her eyes sparkled when she said it. She'd just reached a point where she no longer needed to be the version of herself that others preferred. She'd chosen to become the woman she admired. And that's another powerful truth confident women understand. You don't owe anyone the version of you they're most comfortable with. That means you can change. You can grow. You can let go of roles you once clung to and try on new ones that fit who you are today. You can be softer if you've always been tough, or louder if you've always been quiet. You can say no. You can say yes. You can say, I don't know, and still hold your head high. Confident women give themselves permission to evolve. And not just once, but over and over again. They don't get stuck in the past, no matter how much it shaped them. They carry the lessons, not the weight. They look at old versions of themselves, not with shame, but with gentleness. Like flipping through a photo album and smiling at the woman they used to be. Because they know she was doing her best with what she had. And now they have more. More clarity, more courage, more compassion for themselves. They're not waiting for someone to hand them a fresh start. They've realized every single day is a fresh start, if you're brave enough to take it. You don't need a big event to begin again. You don't need a new year, or a milestone birthday, or someone else's approval. Sometimes, all it takes is a quiet decision, whispered to yourself over morning coffee. Today, I choose me. And from there, everything can begin to change. You start to speak a little differently. Maybe you pause before saying yes. Maybe you finally buy that dress you've always loved but never felt young enough to wear. Maybe you start painting again, or walking more, or reading books that fill your soul instead of just your time. And people notice. Some are inspired, some feel confused, some even push back, because your growth makes them confront their own stuck places. But confident women don't shrink to keep the peace. They've learned that ruffling feathers is sometimes the cost of being true, and they'd rather be true than tolerated. They understand that harmony with others means nothing if it comes at the price of disharmony within themselves. I saw this clearly once at a small family gathering. An older woman, graceful, steady, politely but firmly excused herself from a conversation that turned toxic. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "This doesn't feel respectful," and walked away. And the whole room shifted. Not because she dominated, but because she honored herself. That's the quiet revolution of confidence. It changes the atmosphere without a single battle. Confident women live by something simple, but profound. You're allowed to choose peace, even if others choose chaos. They don't absorb other people's moods as their own. They don't walk on eggshells. They don't bend into shapes that don't feel natural. They let people be who they are, but they also stay grounded in who they are. And that gives them an ease, a grace, a kind of inner calm that draws people in without effort. You can feel it when you're near them. They're not looking around the room wondering what people think. They're not performing. They're present. And presence is powerful. Because in a world of noise, a woman who is fully present, fully herself, is rare. She doesn't try to steal attention. She commands it, simply by being whole. So if you've ever felt like you're too quiet, too plain, too late, I want to tell you, you're not. You're exactly on time. There's a light in you that doesn't need to be polished. It just needs to be uncovered. And once it is, you won't need to chase confidence. It'll rise up from the ground you've been standing on all along. There's a kind of beauty that isn't loud. It doesn't sparkle the way youth does. It doesn't try to be noticed. But once you see it, you can't look away. It's the beauty of a woman who has lived and learned and now walks through life without rushing, without proving, without pretending. You know it when you see her. The way she holds herself, the way she listens without needing to interrupt, the way she stopped filling space with apologies. She doesn't ask the world to validate her anymore. She validates herself with every quiet step she takes toward truth. And here's something else confident women understand. something many people spend their whole lives chasing and still never quite find. They are not here to be liked. They are here to be real. That's a hard one, especially if you were raised to be pleasant, to keep the peace, to make sure no one was ever uncomfortable around you. But the older you get, the more you start to realize being liked by everyone means hiding too many parts of yourself. It means watering yourself down, dressing your words in soft wrapping, tiptoeing around truth, and nodding when you'd rather walk away. And after a while, that wears you down. It makes you tired in your bones, because it takes energy to constantly perform. But real confidence? It's not about being liked, it's about being honest, being rooted, being true to yourself even when it's inconvenient. That doesn't mean being rude. Quite the opposite. Truly confident women are often the most gracious people you'll meet. But their kindness has boundaries. Their compassion isn't rooted in pleasing, it's rooted in understanding. And their yes means more because they're not afraid to say no. They don't smile to smooth over discomfort if something feels off. They don't say, "It's fine," when it's not. They don't pretend not to notice when they're being overlooked or dismissed. They might not always speak up loudly, but their silence is deliberate. Their stillness has weight. And that brings me to something deeper. Something I've seen time and again in the eyes of women who've walked through fire and come out glowing. They've made peace with the parts of themselves others tried to shame. The truth is, most of us were taught somewhere along the way that we had to hide certain things to be lovable. Our anger, our sadness, our wildness, our desires, our mistakes, our failures. But confident women, they've stopped hiding. They've looked at every crooked line, every scar, every secret thought, and said, "You're part of me too. And I won't exile myself anymore." They no longer edit themselves for comfort. They don't throw parts of themselves away just to fit into someone else's picture. They've learned that wholeness is far more beautiful than perfection. And that kind of wholeness, it's magnetic. It's soft and fierce all at once. I once knew a woman who had raised 4 children, buried a husband, started over twice, and now lived alone in a small house with wind chimes on the porch. She made the best coffee you've ever tasted and always had paint on her fingers. One day, she said something that stayed with me. She said, "I used to think my story had to be tidy to be worthy, but now I know. I'm not a porcelain doll on a shelf. I'm a mosaic. Every broken piece has been pressed into something stronger, something that holds light in ways smooth surfaces never could." She smiled then, and it was the kind of smile that doesn't ask for permission. That's what confident women know. Their story doesn't have to be pretty to be powerful. In fact, it's often the cracks that let the light through. The mistakes, the pivots, the falls and comebacks. That's where the wisdom lives. That's where the laughter deepens and the eyes begin to shine in that particular way. You've seen it. Maybe you even carry it yourself. And when a woman gets to that point, where she stops editing her story just to be more palatable, something else beautiful happens. She starts to choose relationships that match her depth. Because here's another secret confident women carry. They no longer beg to be chosen. They choose. They don't chase people who are half interested. They don't cling to connections that drain them. They don't explain themselves to those who don't even ask how they're doing. They've stopped sitting at tables where love is conditional, where their worth depends on how useful or agreeable they are. Instead, they create their own tables, and the people who belong there, friends, family, even new companions, find their way, drawn not by need, but by respect. It doesn't mean they don't love deeply. On the contrary, they often love more deeply than ever before, but without losing themselves. They've learned that real love doesn't require you to abandon who you are. It meets you as you are and stands beside you as you continue becoming. And if that kind of love doesn't show up, they still stand tall, because they'd rather walk alone in truth than stay connected through pretense. That's the quiet strength of confidence. It teaches you that your own company isn't something to endure. It's something to savor. So you stop chasing, you stop explaining, you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What do I need to feel whole?" And that's where freedom lives. Not the kind of freedom that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from arrival. From standing exactly where you are and deciding that who you are is enough. You cook your meals with more care. Not to impress anyone, but because you deserve nourishment. You clean your home not for visitors, but because you want peace in your own space. You light the candles even if no one's coming over. You buy yourself flowers just because it's Wednesday. You no longer save the good things for later. You are the good thing, and you finally know it. You speak with kindness, but you no longer stay silent when something matters. You forgive more easily, but you also walk away faster when something costs you your dignity. You celebrate others, but you've stopped shrinking when it's your turn to be seen. That's what it means to step into your own presence fully. And it's not too late, not even close. In fact, this might be the most powerful time of your life, because the noise has faded, the roles have shifted, and now you have space, not just in your days, but in your soul. Space to listen, space to feel, space to finally ask yourself, not what the world expects from you, but what you want to give the world. Now. And that's the final, quiet truth confident women carry like a thread through every season of their lives. You are not finished. You are unfolding, like the moon, like the tide, like an old book with pages still unturned. You are still becoming, and no matter who sees it or doesn't, the becoming itself is holy. Some people will tell you that after a certain age, everything starts to wind down. They'll talk about slowing rhythms, smaller dreams, days that blend into each other. They'll speak in quiet tones, as if aging were something to be endured rather than embraced. As if the soul doesn't keep growing even when the body asks for more rest. But you and I know something different now. You know that confidence isn't loud. It doesn't come from applause, attention, or keeping up with the fast pace of the world. It comes from within, from a place deeper than youth ever touched. It's the kind that's earned through years of listening, loving, losing, rebuilding, and rising again. And the most beautiful thing about that kind of confidence is this: it never expires. It's not attached to how many birthdays have passed or how many people are still around to notice. It's not about how firm your skin is or how fast your step. It's about the way you carry your story, the way you sit in your own presence and say, "I know who I am now, and I like her." You've weathered so much. Maybe you've been underestimated. Maybe you've been left behind, overlooked, taken for granted. Maybe you've spent years putting everyone else first. And maybe, just maybe, you've only recently started to ask, "What do I want now?" That question, that quiet, brave question, is the seed of everything. Because here's what confident women understand, and they carry it not on their sleeve, but in the way they greet the world each morning. You're allowed to want more, even now. Especially now. More peace, more beauty, more freedom in your choices. More softness in your relationships, more joy without justification. More moments that belong to you, not just to those who need you. You're allowed to say, "I don't want to carry this anymore." Whether this is guilt or resentment, or the weight of being someone you no longer recognize. You're allowed to say, "That dream I shelved 20 years ago, I'm taking it down again." Whether it's to travel, to dance, to write, to love again, or simply to rest deeply, unapologetically. Because confidence also looks like this. Putting your hand over your own heart and whispering, "I've done enough, I've been enough, and I'm still allowed to bloom." You don't need to fight for your place in the world. You are your place. And from that place, you can give. Not because you're supposed to, but because it brings you joy. You can love, not because you're afraid of being alone, but because you have something real to share. You can speak. Not to impress, but because your truth deserves air. And maybe, just maybe, You'll notice how others start to lean in when you do. Not because you demanded anything, but because your very presence has become its own quiet revolution. Let me tell you something I truly believe. The world needs more women like you. Women who are no longer trying to be anyone else. Women who aren't playing small. Women who sit in rooms, in families, in circles of friends, and offer something steady, clear, and rooted. Not drama, not noise, just presence. You don't need to fix others. You don't need to convince anyone. Just being fully yourself, that is enough. That is what changes things. Because when one woman chooses truth over performance, she creates space for others to do the same. When one woman stands tall in her softness, she gives others permission to stop hardening themselves to survive. When one woman says, "I'm no longer hiding who I am," a ripple begins, and it touches daughters, neighbors, strangers, even those who might never say a word, but they'll feel it. That ripple starts here, with you. So as we bring this time together to a close, I want to leave you with something simple. Something I hope you'll carry with you long after the screen goes dark. You are not too late. Not for joy. Not for confidence. Not for a life that feels like yours again. Every breath you take is a reminder that you are still in the story. And every moment you choose yourself is a moment the world becomes a little more honest, a little more beautiful. So take up your space. Gently, boldly, quietly, however it fits you. Wear what feels like freedom on your skin. Say the thing you've been afraid to say. Rest when your body asks. Laugh without watching who's looking. And if someone doesn't understand the new way you carry yourself, that's all right. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. So here's to you, to the woman who's stopped apologizing, to the woman who's finally listening to her own voice, to the woman who knows, deep in her bones, that the best part of her story might just be the part she's living now. Thank you for spending this time with me. If anything in this video spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what part of your confidence journey you're stepping into right now. Tell me how you're choosing yourself at last. And if this conversation felt like something you'd want to come back to, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking this path together. Because wherever you are, whatever you've lived, you're not alone. And I'm wishing you a life that is full, honest, peaceful, and completely your own. Take care.